Communism is dead, they say. Socialism is good for equality, they say. Oh, really? What about racism? Today, we are taking a deep look at racism and its connection to communism, socialism, and Marxism right now in our world today, here in the US. Very much so. And we're speaking with an expert, Reverend Kevin McGary, who is co-founder of Every Black Life Matters. We'll go behind the scenes to look at how the narrative of supporting Black Americans has been used, taken advantage of, to further socialism throughout our society today. Does that sound serious? Yes, it does. And yes, it is. But don't worry, serious is a good thing. We cover serious topics here, but we have solutions. And information and education is what we need. Real facts, real history. And that's what we're talking about here today. So get ready for it. You're going to love this interview. This is the Today with Kay show. And I'm Kay. My name is Kay Rubicek. Now let's get into this. How is your coffee supply? Is your coffee really 100% organic and roasted right here in the US? Well, Freedom First Coffee is. It's a gourmet coffee roasted in Victorian-era roasters in the heartland of the USA. Their tagline is, tastes like freedom. I do not know what freedom flavor exactly really is, but I can say it tastes great. I drink it myself. I would like to invite you to give it a try. Go to freedomfirstcoffee.com. That's freedomfirstcoffee.com. Use the promo code K, K-A-Y, for a discount. And that will also support this show. I like to say we vote with our dollars, so buying your coffee from Freedom First Coffee is a delicious way to vote for freedom. And if you already have your own favorite coffee supply, don't worry, because you can buy me a coffee. Go to my website, kayrubacek.com. That's KAYRUBACEK.com. And there you can actually download my latest book for free. It's called Nowhere Left to Run, 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today. I wanted to put that out for free, and that's why I added the Coffee with K button, where you can buy me a virtual coffee to help me keep being able to put out more content like this. I appreciate you all for all the support that you've given me and all the encouragement. It helps me keep going, and I hope that I can do the same for you too. Reverend Kevin McGary, thank you so much for joining me today.
It is a pleasure to be here with you, Kay. Thank you for having me.
Your book is called Woked Up, Finally Putting an Axe to the Taproot of White Supremacy and Racism in America. What a title. Tell me, you're putting an axe to the taproot of white supremacy and racism. I mean, that sounds like a really big... you need a big axe for that. What is the taproot?
When I gave that title to my wife, she thought, no, you can't do that. And I said, why not? She said, well, taproot is the main root, the actual root that feeds plants and all of that. She said, so there is not one person who's responsible for white supremacy and racism in America. I said, oh, yeah, there is. And so I had to describe to her what happened. White supremacy in America really came from one person. Racism in its current form, in its modern understanding, came from one person. And that would be Charles Robert Darwin. Now, some people would say, well, Darwin was a brilliant scientist. I mean, so his science work, okay, yeah, some of that was really, really good. His evolutionary theories, horrible. We had a gentleman by the name of Frederick Blumenbach, who was in 1770, who was the first one to come up with classification of races. And he says, look, so these are the 5 races. They're based on geography, not on skin color at all. It's just based on geography. And he says, look, I've done the studies, and I've already done the investigations to confirm that there is no distinction based on intellect or cognitive abilities with blacks. There's none. So he was a precursor, 1770, to Darwin, which Darwin was born in 1808. Darwin's older cousin, who was a radical environmentalist, and that would be Thomas Malthus. And Thomas Malthus says, "Look, uh, I know that we've studied sort of patterns of populations and population growth." He was talking to his younger cousin Charles Darwin, and he says, "But there's some real concerns about populations overwhelming our pure white Aryan race, our Caucasian race, our European race." And he said, because these other ethnicities are overpopulating the planet. We have to protect the planet. So how are we going to protect the planet? You have to somehow infuse some of this in some of your theories. I know you're working on some theories, Charles. These are some of the things your natural selection, your evolutionary theories. We need to somehow make sure that we weave in that there's a finite planet, and we want to make sure that we have enough capacity there to maintain our pure Aryan race. He was so concerned about his genes and his heritage and his intellectual capacity. He married his first cousin. Then Darwin, following his older cousin's footstep, he was so concerned about his supremacy, he married his first cousin as well. They were sincere about trying to maintain their superior distinction. In his first book, he goes to describe natural selection. But if you read the subtitle of the first book, he gives you an indication that he wants to racialize things, because in the subtitle of natural selection, it says, "For the preservation of most favored races." His second book, The Descent of Man, he goes into detail what that means. He says, look, we pure white Aryans, Caucasians, Europeans, we must protect our intellectual and our intellectual capacity and our resourcefulness. We're much more resourceful and intellectually superior than any other ethnicity. This is what Darwin said. He says, I've done the research. This is a fact. So he inculcated in that one sort of statement or proclamation white supremacy. This is what it is. It's like we're supreme. We have to protect ourselves. Everyone else is not supreme. He says, if you look at my evolution, blacks are the perfect example. They're still trying to climb the evolutionary path. So they're at that sort of subhuman. As a matter of fact, I would classify them as apes, savages, gorillas. Darwin's quotes. All in the book, by the way. So everything's footnoted. You could research it. It's there. But all of this is spelled out, and you could follow it, and you could see it, the exact quotes from all of these guys, and how they built a narrative for white supremacy and racism in America.
It sounds like a perversion of science to push an ideology.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like. In your book, you come to the present as well. People are finding that they're confused, and they're feeling afraid to say anything wrong because they may be targeted. They may be attacked.
Yes.
They don't want to offend anybody.
What is really going on is the entire woke movement, of which I would say the woke movement is sort of an overarching theme. Underneath, you got critical race theory, CRT. You got DEI. You got social justice. You got liberation theology. You got black liberation theology. You could have all of these sort of movements or sub-movements that are part of, hey, if you're woke, these are the things that you participate in, right? And so what you literally have are Marxist revolutionaries under the guise of critical race theory and all these other things, right? Because everything that I just named off is based in Marxism. Okay. So some people would say, well, okay, you talked about Darwin, but how did Marx get in here? Darwin literally mentored, and they got their primary ideology. When I say they, I mean Marx and Engels, from Darwin. Is you have radical revolutionary Marxists. BLM said that they were. I mean, they said we're revolutionary Marxists. This is what they said. So, and all of these other philosophies, black liberation theologies, James Cone, he was a Marxist. He agreed he was Marxist. liberation theology general is Marxist, South American Marxism. Social justice, that's just another thing that was created to push Marxist ideas, right? DEI is really the overturning of content of character and core competencies and skill sets, and saying, look, no, we need equal outcomes. We want to make sure that everybody gets to the table. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're not going to necessarily focus on requirements for jobs per se. If there's somebody that's summarily or almost equally talented, we're going to make sure we promote those people so we can have diversity in the boardroom, diversity in the workplace, diversity in this. So it's a less of a focus on competency, more of a focus on outcomes, right? Everybody should be getting paid this. So these are all Marxist ideas. So the way it's playing out is literally we have racism. So all of these are racist. Critical race theory is a racist theory. It's not even debatable. It's not even all whites are racist and all whites are complicit with the 1800s. I mean, that's classic racism. You don't even have to think about it. DEI is obviously racist. We're going to make sure that we, promote people over other people because we just need more blacks here and Latinos there, right? Black liberation theology is clearly racist, saying that, look, your salvation really comes through black oppression. So you need to serve blacks in a particular way. You need to be an activist. You need to do this. And that's where you will get the totality of the gospel, that because the gospel is incomplete, that Jesus Savior thing is really not, that won't get you to heaven. You need to have an activist motivation. So all of these things are purely Marxist. Now, here's what's interesting about it. Marx, his number one goal, he says, look, I don't care anything about my social philosophies, my economic philosophy. I don't care if that ever catches. He says, what I care about, my number one goal in life is to dethrone God. So all of these influences, all these other are literally manifestly demonic. I mean, they have Marxism infused in them. And Marx, his only goal was to dethrone God. He hated God. So, and he was a grotesque racist. This guy was the worst. He called his son-in-law, who was Cuban and a little darker skin, he called him Negrillo, and he called them the N-word constantly. He called Jews the N-word, Jewish N-words. And so he was horrible. And so you have all of these Marxist philosophies, these people marching around and saying they're going to teach you how to do about racial unity or anti-racism, and they're actually embracing a fully Marxist and therefore fully racist set or frame that they work from.
Gold, 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 gold. Have you heard that before? If you haven't been paying attention. We are heading into a recession. It is inevitable. It is a really serious financial crisis. Many people have known this is coming for a long time. The financial analysts who are finally actually talking about it are saying it's going to be a lot worse than they expected. They knew it was coming. Come on. But are you prepared? If you are not, it's not too late. If you want to use gold as a way to secure your assets, you need to talk to someone you can trust, someone who knows the financial industry. Don't talk to a podcaster like me. I know communism and socialism, and I know the economics of that, but I don't know how to invest in gold. You got to talk to an expert. I trust Ira at ourgoldguy.com. Do whatever you can to protect yourself for the upcoming financial crisis. You've got an idea of what's coming. No one knows exactly how bad it's going to be, but now is the time to prepare. Go to ourgoldguy.com, talk to Ira, and mention my name, Kay. You're a co-founder of the Every Black Lives Matter. Did I say that correctly? EBLM?
Every Black Life Matters. Yes.
Every Black Life Matters. Now, you're representing your community, but how do you feel when you see something like this, something so big, taking the name of your community, BLM, Black Lives Matter, and then having that money being essentially misappropriated and not even being spent to support the community? For me, looking at that, I feel it's outrageous. But
Yeah.
you're in the community, representing the community. How does that impact you?
Well, so it was tragic. I mean, you have 80 million that you get from opportunistically from donors across the United States and around the world, really. And then you have corporate donors like NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, and then corporations that felt the guilt of the moment, who were also giving. So there's some estimates that there were pledges up to $1 billion that were pledged. Now, some of those may not come through now over the next 10 years. They may pull back because they see all the malfeasance and fraud or whatever that's going on with that organization. But here's the tragedy: you had a lot of black families that were trying to figure out, especially single mothers, that were trying to figure out, well, how do I go to work when my kids have to stay home and I have young kids? That was an opportunity for BLM to say, look, we're going to stand up in some of these communities where we know we have a large percentage, or a percentage of single mother households where they really need to get to work, but they can't. And so they risk being fired, they risk being whatever, during the COVID years. And so what they could have done is just, they could have paid with all that money. I mean, you could have paid to have, some childcare available for some of these mothers that really needed to get to work. Instead, these mothers got laid off. They got, maybe they took a leave, and they didn't have money really to kind of make it through. So BLM could have helped with that too. So there was all kinds of opportunities in the community, and so it's really tragic in that way when you see the amount of money and there was no good that was forwarded in the community. And so it's really a missed opportunity, in my opinion. Now, the reason why we started Every Black Life Matters is because we saw that people were sincere. They wanted to really help the Black community. They saw what happened in that 9 minutes and 43 seconds with George Floyd losing his life. They saw it. And so they had, a very visceral reaction to it. A lot of it was emotional. And they really wanted to do something for the Black community. How can I help? How can I be a part of it? And so we started because we saw that there were pastors that were going out with BLM, avowed Marxists, and all the other things that they were, they're anti, father, anti-family, and all these other things. And we said, look, we need to be the alternative. So we're going to start Every Black Life Matters, because what that illuminates is it illuminates the targeting of Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger, when she started her family planning clinics and Planned Parenthood, she says our goal is to just exterminate the Negro population. Her words, exact words. And and the reality is other ethnicities are being born at this rate, and blacks are being born at this rate. So when we say Every Black Life Matters, we really want you to put a TOO at the end of it, because what we're saying is a statement of equality.
A statement of equality. I love that. And what do you think about? There's been a lot of public figures who also happen to be black and who have made statements really like yourself, just putting facts out there. I can mention as a Candace Owens, for example, or Kanye West, and they've been targeted. How
Yeah.
do you think? How do you think that affects the general public when they're not getting access to the real facts about how the black community is being targeted, and it's being really being misrepresented?
So everybody should see that there's a mass collaboration or collusion, if you will, between media, politicians, education, all of the basic mountains in culture are being covered and colluded together by a sort of globalist mindset. Okay. So when they cancel people like Kanye, I mean, apparently he's now the richest black man here. So,
And
because
JP
he's
Morgan Chase has just cancelled his bank account and
expensive.
asked him
Yeah.
to move his whole business away. So even
Yeah. That's
that's
big. That's
amazing.
big time. So we see that social media companies and banks, they have a lot of power, and they have the capacity to say, look, we don't want your business, just because you're not ascribing to groupthink, just because you step outside and you're a free thinker and you happen to have a different opinion or a dissenting voice. So, what they're trying to do, though, is send a message to everyone else. Look, don't get out of line. We have your mortgage, we have your banking, we have your media platforms. We'll cancel you if you get out of line. So, a lot of people are a little bit squeamish. They may be with us, but they're not going to say much. Fortunately for Kanye, he's got a lot of money. He can go everywhere. He can go to Swiss banks if he wants. He don't care. Or he could start his own. He's good. But nothing that they've really said should be really worth canceling them over. And so it's really appalling to see how Marxist we've gotten, because this is a Marxist tactic. This is a tactic that was inherited. One of the modern day Marxists would be Saul Alinsky. And Saul Alinsky talked a lot about, framing conversations, framing narratives, and stick to it, and make sure that you basically pummel a person into submission with your your primary narrative that you're trying to
Yes, I've
put.
got a quote here this is from your book. You talk about Saul Alinsky, who was the notorious community organizer, communist, Marxist from the 1960s, 70s, and modern day Marxist, and he's using the modern day Marxist tactics, and the I mean, we're seeing them today in this the current woke movement. And so there's that you list out, and what I like about your book is that you list out, you give sources, and you list out from the original primary sources, which I think is always critical. If you're studying something, if you're reading a book, if you're watching a movie, ask where did that come from? Find out, is that a primary source, or is it just someone's opinion? It's important to know. And so I like how you put in Saul Alinsky's some of his strategies, and I'll read 3 of them that I think are really relevant. One is ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Ouch. That's just nasty. And
Look at
he
what
also,
happened to Kanye. He makes a statement about abortion, and they start calling him to. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to. That's a very, very important. So we should see what's happening right now. When they ridicule
exactly.
him and say he needs a straitjacket, that's that's a perfect example of what we're talking about, right? So the woke movement is actually there to say, look, we will cancel you. We've canceled Dr. Seuss in our schools. We've canceled Huck Finn and all these other books. We've canceled, Alex Jones. Now he owes $1 billion. We will do it to you. And so that threat is huge in a lot of people's minds. They're like, I don't want any part of that.
What about regular people? What can regular citizens do when they look at these high profile celebrities and they think, wow, what about little old me? What can I do?
We have to break out of the groupthink mold, okay? And we have to be able to be honest with ourselves, integrous with ourselves, honest enough to always be committed to speaking truth, even if it's inconvenient, even if there's consequences. My employer, my wife, my kid, whatever. We must, be men and women enough to say, look, this is the truth. Now, here's the deal with what's happening with the woke movement. In this book, I fully uncover the roots of it and confirm that wokeism in and of itself is racist and white supremacist. So the idea is that we should be able to have a conversation with our woke friends and woke employers and say, look, I know you're trying to do this, but really what you're trying to do, while you call others white supremacist and racist and all these other, pejoratives, you're actually, you actually support white supremacy and racism by virtue of the Marxism, by virtue of the tactics. Now, Mr. Employer or Mr. Banker, I'm sincere. I'd love to help you through this. And so, can we at least have a conversation? Because I think what you're doing now is just the Marxist playbook, which is, of course, racist and white supremacist.
Yeah, there's a lot of personal responsibility that people
Yeah,
need to take for their actions. But to
definitely.
get to that point, they have to know the facts, as you're saying. They've got to know the history. They've got to know where these ideas and ideologies and decisions have come from. And that's going to take a process. But
It is.
I really think that we're on the right track because people are talking about this now. These things are being exposed.
Yeah.
People are asking more questions. And as I agree with you very much, that there are a lot of good people out there that have been swept up into what they feel is something good with this
Yeah.
wokeism movement. But they still have the ability to really look at the facts and take a good hard look at where it came from and see that they've been lied to. And then it's hard to admit that we haven't been told the truth,
Yeah.
and that we've accepted lies in many ways, especially through the media and a lot of education over time. But I
Yeah.
really believe we're on the right track to do that. Now, Kevin, can you tell us about where people can find more information about you? And you have a YouTube channel. Can you tell us about that before we finish up?
So the YouTube channel is Y'all Woked Up, YALL Woked Up, okay? And you go there and just subscribe and hit the button, hit the bell, because every time I do daily updates, most days, where I do 1 minute videos of current events news in a non-woke fashion. So you get quick hits on what's happening, of some of the top stories, right? And so go there, sign up, subscribe, and I have over 200 videos. I just started it a month ago, but that shows you how often I'm cranking through these talking points. So go there and you'll find out more about me. Now, the actual website for Every Black Life Matters is everyblm.com. Everyblm.com. Now, here's the other thing that we're doing. We hear about the anti-racism and the white fragility training that's going on in these corporations around America. And everybody's saying, hey, you need to have racial sensitivity training. And the default is, okay, I'll call some leftist Marxist organization, have them come in here and train us. And they're going to divide us because they're going to say, look, all white people need to be in back, all ethnicities in front. And then they have these things that they do, these exercises that really, sort of divide people instead of bringing them together. What we're doing is we're actually unifying people. We actually have a training based on this book where we're going right to the taproot of racism. We're exposing it, and we've made that part of a training. So, and certification for anybody and everybody to come and get trained in racial unity. So what that does is it gives you the ability to, when your employer comes and says, hey, we got to take this training, you can say, look, I've already had it. Every Black Life Matters. I've taken their 5 modules and I'm certified. Look, here, I'm certified in racial unity. And so the other thing that it does is if your employer says, well, it doesn't matter, you still have to go through it, you won't be traumatized when you go through it because you understand exactly what's going on with these other methodologies that they try to get you.
So visit everyblm.com and Kevin's YouTube channel to get more information and stay educated, because this is a solution. Oh, it's a little bit of hard work. You're going to have to think, you're going to have to learn, you're going to have to face some uncomfortable truths. That's what we have to do. We have to get out of our comfort zones and face the reality of what's really going on in our world today.
Yes.
Take hard looks at what's been going on. And that is a big, big part of the solution, because you are a part of the solution. You cannot just leave it to someone else. Don't just sit there and complain and say, oh, everything's bad and no one's going to solve the problem for me. That's asking big government to take care of you, and they'll take care of you in a very bad way if you want them to. So what are you going to do about it? Get yourself educated. Go and read Kevin's book and go to his website. Thank you, Kevin McGary, so much for talking with me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Kay. I really appreciate being here.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We've had a great history lesson, and we've also had a great lesson on Marxism, Darwinism, racism, and where things are going right now and what you can do about it. So stay tuned for next episode, where we'll be getting into more solutions behind the bad news today. You have been watching or listening to the Today with Kay show. I am Kay Rubicek, and if you are listening on a podcast, click that 5-star review button, please. Don't bother with any lower reviews. I will never be offended if you don't give me a review, but if you do like the show, click the 5, because the algorithms care about that. That's how big tech works. And if you're watching a video on Rumble, thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, not bad either. So please click the like and subscribe button. I appreciate you very, very much. Stay well. I'll see you soon.